So, maybe for some of us, it's difficult to relate to David, right? If you're like me and you're not a fighter, you're like, that's cool, but I'm not a person that's running into the battle, right? Like, yeah, bring it on. Yeah. That's okay. Maybe you don't feel that bold, right? And maybe you're like, oh man, I love that story about Jesus calming the storm too, but you don't understand my storm. You don't understand what I'm dealing with, right? Maybe you don't feel like you're close enough to Jesus that you're just like, don't you realize that I'm dying, Jesus? Maybe you don't feel like you have that connection. I got one more example from Scripture for you, just for you. If you can't relate to David and you can't relate to the disciples in the boat, I got one more for you. It's found in Mark 5. Mark 5, verses 25 through 34. Those of you that are Bible scholars will remember this as the woman with the issue of blood. Mark 5, 25 through 34. It says, a woman in the crowd. She's just a woman in the crowd. We don't even know her name. We know that Jesus' head was resting on a pillow, but we don't even know this poor lady's name. She had suffered for 12 years. 12 years she suffered with constant bleeding. It says she had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she had spent everything she had to pay them, but she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. Anybody ever feel like that? The harder I try, the behinder I get. The faster I go, the behinder I get. She had heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. That's a declaration of faith, isn't it? She made a declaration of faith.
For sure.
And what else did she do?
She did.
She didn't just say it. She took that step, right? She took the fight to it. That thing that was against her for 12 years. If I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. Immediately the bleeding stopped. Just like immediately the storm stopped. And she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him, so he turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my robe?" His disciples said to him, "Look at this crowd pressing around you. How can you ask who touched me?" But he, Jesus, kept on looking around to see who had done it. Listen to this. It says, then the frightened woman, she was now afraid. She wasn't afraid to creep up behind Jesus and touch him, knowing that she would be healed. But now, she's like, oh my word, what just happened? And what's going to happen now? It says, the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell to her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over." This thing came against her. She made a declaration. She stepped out in faith. Even though she just crept up. She didn't come to Jesus and be like, "Jesus, this is my problem. Please, I believe that you can heal me." She crept up behind him and was like, boop. Right? And he says, "Your suffering is over." Go in peace. I love this story because, like I said, she's just a woman in the crowd. She was just a fly on the wall. Some of us like to be just a fly on the wall, right? We're like, oh, I don't bother anyone. I don't make any waves, right? I just creep up and touch Jesus and I'll be on my way. But some of us, right? Some of us feel like we're not that close. We're not close enough to Jesus. Oh, I can't get that close. I don't even know what is that? Right? Check this out. If that's you. If you prefer to be the fly on the wall and nobody notice you, or if you feel like you don't know how to get that close to Jesus, I want you to know that Jesus wasn't even looking for this woman. Do you understand that? Jesus was on his way to do something else. He was going about his Jesus business. He never noticed this woman. He was surprised when it happened. Did you ever think about that? Jesus being surprised? He was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Who touched me? Jesus made the whole crowd stop. Everything stop for this woman who doesn't even have a name and who didn't approach him face to face and who crept up behind him and just touched him. I don't know if you ever thought about that before. She had to make a move. What would that story look like if she hadn't stepped out and done something, right? I can only assume that Jesus would have just continued on his way. Because according to Jesus' surprise at power going out from him, it wasn't in his plan for that day. She went and got it. Do you understand? When fear is coming against you, you got to run to it. You got to take the fight to it. Go get it. I'm not yelling at you.
Keep going.
If you, I'm going to look all the way around. If you are in a fight with fear right now, or anxiety right now, and you feel like you've tried everything, like this woman, I've tried everything. Nothing works. In fact, I seem to get worse. I want you to know a few things. Number one, you are not alone. You are not alone. Can you imagine how alone that woman felt? She didn't have anybody. The crippled guy had some friends that carried him in his mat, dug a hole in the roof, and lowered him right down in front of Jesus. This woman didn't have that, apparently. She had to sneak through the crowd. You're not alone. Even David wasn't alone, even though it says that he went out, right? David knew that he wasn't alone. He's like, I come at you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies, right? David knew that he wasn't alone as he quickly went out onto the battlefield. When he was taking the fight to Goliath, he knew that he wasn't alone. And you are not alone in your battle right now. Number two, you are not a victim. You're not. I'm sorry. Stop acting like one. Stop acting like a victim.
Amen.
Stop telling yourself that these things are just, it is what it is. No. I don't accept that for you. As a shepherd, I do not accept that for you.